All hell broke loose during your stay in the hospital. This place isn't your property anymore. You don't belong here. Go look for another spot to crash." I went numb. The injury, far from mended, pulsed with sharp agony. It was unbelievable that such harsh words were spilling from the lips of my sole child, the boy I'd poured every ounce of my existence into. I'd only spent 3 weeks in the hospital dealing with issues from my hip operation. I came back dreaming of embracing my family once more, just to discover the entrance barred to the dwelling Anthony and I had carefully constructed across 3 decades. Right then, the sting of disloyalty sank in. It went beyond merely forfeiting my residence. It uncovered a sinister scheme I couldn't fully comprehend yet. If you've ever pondered what unfolds when a mom reaches her breaking point, stick around and drop in the comments which town you're tuning in from. My release forms rustled in my coat as the cab rolled up to my traditional bungalow. Those 21 days had dragged on forever. Problems from the hip procedure had left me fighting off fevers and bugs, while life marched on without a pause for me. I felt drained yet grateful to at last return to my sanctuary. Sanctuary, the 2-level abode that Anthony and I had tenderly refurbished throughout our 30-year union, loomed ahead, glowing in the waning daylight. The blooms I'd set in the ground long ago still flourished along the path, even if they obviously craved some care in my absence. "Want a hand with your luggage, lady?" the cabbie inquired, eyeing my walking stick. "Only up to the entrance, thanks," I answered, my throat rough from the stale clinic atmosphere. My boy ought to be there. The entry swung wide before we got close. Richard, my lone offspring, filled the frame, but without the grin I'd anticipated. Rather, his features showed a look I'd never encountered, icy, detached, unyielding. His tone mirrored that parched, stiff vibe. In the background, I spotted stirring in the den. His spouse, Veronica. And were those her folks? "Richard, what's happening?" I questioned, advancing. He obstructed the threshold, refusing to budge. "You ought not to have shown up. We figured you'd arrive the next day." The driver placed my compact bag next to me, picking up on the strain. I settled the fare fast, abruptly hoping he'd hang around. "No gentle method to put this," Richard went on while the cab departed. "Circumstances shifted in your absence at the clinic. This property belongs to us now." A chill coursed over me, unrelated to my ongoing recovery. "What on earth do you mean? We'd sorted everything out. Veronica's mom and dad had to relocate from Dallas, and this spot offers way more room than one person requires. The paperwork's complete. You'll need to scout a new residence." My thoughts raced to make sense of his declaration. Paperwork. Nothing had crossed my desk. "Richard, this is ridiculous. Open up my door immediately." I pressed on, relying more on my staff. Now Veronica stepped up next to him. Her golden locks were flawlessly arranged, and she sported what I instantly clocked as my green gem studs. Anthony's present for our silver celebration. "Isabella," she cooed with that phony charm I'd grown to spot over time, "your stuff's already boxed up. It's stashed in the carport. We can forward it to your new digs." From their rear, Veronica's parents, Raymond and Claudia Sterling, stepped into view. I'd crossed paths with them scarcely a handful of times before. Raymond, lofty and sleekly fit with his gray mane, had always come off as haughty to me. Claudia, forever wearing that critical scowl, made no effort to conceal her scorn for my humble abode, the same one she now occupied like it was hers. "Regret that it ended up like this," Raymond uttered, his voice devoid of any remorse. But Richard laid out the plan plainly. "The transfer's official under law." Official. I barely choked out. "No way. I didn't authorize a thing." Richard's expression toughened. "Durable power of attorney. Recall those forms you inked prior to the procedure for health choices. They covered monetary issues, too." The truth slammed into me like a blow. True, I'd endorsed a pile of sheets my own flesh and blood had passed over. Nervous about the procedure, I'd placed total faith in him. I hadn't skimmed beyond the opener. "You deceived me," I uttered. The phrase rang empty, too weak for the depth of the treachery. "We're acting in the interest of all," Veronica cut in. "The place is too demanding for you solo. Richard's handled its upkeep for ages. Stay away from now on," Richard wrapped up decisively. "Your items will be shipped. No turning back." There I remained, propped on my cane, gazing at the child I'd nurtured, the kid from lullaby nights, the youth I'd schooled on the road, the adult whose schooling I'd funded through overtime grinds. He now seemed an imposter in my boy's skin. "This violates the law," I murmured. "And you're aware." "It's over," he shot back icily. "Don't complicate it." Something shattered within me, but not as they might have foreseen. Unexpected. No sobs, no pleas. It was an icy resolve. A resolve I hadn't experienced since my days managing financial regulations at the bank. "Revel in it," I stated flatly, pivoting from them. "Savor it all." The bewilderment etched on their features from my composure nearly justified the ruin. Nearly. As I hobbled to the cab, which I'd wisely requested to linger, I retrieved my cell, not to summon authorities. That could wait, on my schedule, through my methods. Rather, I dispatched one brief note to Gloria Evans. Plan B. The lodging in Central Phoenix felt detached, yet spotless, serving as a brief sanctuary as I restored my vigor and focus. My fingers quivered while I perched on the bed's rim, gazing at the screen. Gloria responded at once. "Keep secure. Heading there now." Gloria Evans and I had shared a friendship spanning 4 decades, dating back to our university days. She'd risen as a powerhouse attorney, whereas I'd forged my path in financial oversight. Following Anoni's passing, she'd assisted in sorting my matters with the precision stemming from our mutual career caution. "Always prepare a contingency," she'd counseled, particularly regarding family assets. Back then, I'd dismissed it as overkill. Today, her insight appeared downright visionary. A gentle rap at the entrance signaled her presence. Even at this hour, Gloria appeared flawless in her custom attire, her gray locks secured in her signature twist, yet her face burned with indignation. "Those wretched scavengers," she hissed fiercely during our cautious embrace, aware of my fragile state. "Are you okay? In body or spirit?" I forced a grin that failed to light my gaze. "In both." She set her portfolio on the table and extracted documents with habitual speed. "I'm upright, at least. That's progress." "The remainder," I added, collapsing onto the mattress. "I keep expecting to rouse from this horror, blaming it on a delirium from illness." Gloria's features eased briefly before she resumed her composed demeanor. "I've initiated the procedures. The trust papers are airtight. Anthony was thorough. The property handover won't hold up under examination." "Timeline?" I inquired. "For nullifying this bogus shift. Several weeks, perhaps longer if they resort to tactics." She hesitated. "But Isabella, one more detail. Something uncovered in auditing your finances." My gut twisted. "What's that?" "Odd debits from your portfolios amid your medical stay. Substantial sums." She passed me a hard copy ledger. I reviewed it swiftly. My expertise in finance spotted the anomalies right away. 5 transactions exceeding $220,000 in total, directed to unfamiliar holdings, executed via electronic approvals, supposedly mine. As I lay semi-aware in intensive care, I murmured, the betrayal's depth crashing over me. They didn't merely seize my residence. They've been siphoning my funds. Worse still, Gloria pressed somberly. My aide ran an initial probe on the Steerings. Their property advisory firm in Dallas faced multiple grievances that vanished before probes could launch. Plus, Veronica's online profile lists stints at 3 lending firms shuttered over compliance breaches. It all aligned in a stark revelation. Could they be entangled in loan schemes? Gloria affirmed, and they've probably schemed for months biding time. Your illness handed them the ideal window to hasten things. My thoughts flashed to exchanges over the prior year. Veronica's intensifying curiosity about my wealth, Richard's offhand probes into my accounts and networks. The roots of this treachery predated my operation by far. "Richard," I uttered, his name lodging in my voice. "Do you believe he's aware of their actions?" Gloria's quiet spoke volumes. "I instilled stronger values in him," I whispered, scarcely heard. "His dad did as well," Gloria countered, her voice gentle yet resolute. "Folks evolve, Isabella, particularly with fortunes at stake. So what's your next move?" I shut my lids, sensing the burden of 67 years spent crafting a profession, kin and dwelling. Upon reopening them, an inner steel had formed. "All of it," I declared. "I'll pursue every avenue to recover my belongings and ensure they answer for it, including Richard." Gloria's brow lifted just slightly. "No favoritism for kin," I clarified. "He chose his path. Voicing it stung, yet rang true. If he's entangled in crime, he earns the fallout." She inclined her head, approving my resolve. "Then we proceed wisely, methodically. I know agents in the FBI's Economic Offenses Division who'd eagerly pursue our findings. I possess connections too," I noted, recalling past associates. "But let's not rush. They view me as broken, a frail, elderly lady who she'll pull back without a sound. That very assumption hands us the upper hand. What's going through your mind?" I dug into my purse and retrieved a compact dark journal, the one that had been my anchor back in my days at the bank. Step 1, we record it all meticulously. Each cash pullout, each faked paper, each deception spun. Next, we trace the flow of funds. If they're orchestrating a scam, patterns will emerge. Gloria flashed that keen, hunter's grin I recalled from our younger days. And after that, I added, a chill resolve surging within me. We activate the snare right when they're off guard. We started sketching out the strategy. My cell vibrated with a text from Richard. "Mom, send over the access codes for your investment holdings so we can move the leftover cash for your upkeep. Do it right away." I displayed the note to Gloria, who rolled her eyes in revulsion. How should I respond, I wondered. "Hold off for now," she suggested. "Keep them guessing. Keep them on edge." I agreed, pushing the device to the side. The former me would have fired back without delay, desperate to soothe tensions, to preserve harmony no matter the price. But that version of myself stayed abandoned at the threshold of the home they'd swiped from me. This new version was in it for the marathon, tucked away in a motel space. I'd linked up again with my closest confidant and attorney Gloria, who dropped a bombshell revelation. Not just had they taken my residence, but they were siphoning my finances too, all during my hospital stay. Spotting odd shifts in the Sterling's company past, I faced the gut-wrenching chance that my very own child was tangled in some deeply malevolent plot. Though my body was still mending, my determination had solidified. Rather than clash head-on right then, I'd allow them to fancy their triumph while I quietly assembled the evidence that would spell their downfall. "Take a look at this," Gloria urged, pushing her computer over the inn table. 3 days had elapsed since my degrading ousting. We'd shifted to a cozier long-term lodging, using bills to dodge any digital footprints. My bodily vigor was gradually rebuilding, even as the mental scars stayed fresh. The monitor showed land deeds from my area. I peered closely, scanning the file. The 1/3 from the end, Gloria pointed out. My gaze stretched wide in dismay. The Millers, residing 2 spots away, offloaded their place 3 months prior. The purchasers, Sterling Investment Properties, LLC. "No way that's random," I muttered. "Even more telling," Gloria continued, paging through additional files. The Hendersons directly opposite sold to the identical firm just last month, and the pensioners at the Bend already had their dwelling lined up with that self-same acquirer. "They're snapping up the entire district," I breathed, as the plot crystallized before me. But what's the motive? Gloria brought up a land use petition lodged with the Municipal Development Office 2 weeks back when I was bedridden. They'd put forward this bid to rezone the full sector from one-family homes to blended commercial residential. The revelation struck like a blow. My block sat at the fringe of Phoenix's booming central zone. Under fresh zoning rules, land costs would soar. They're turning my place into their base while scooping the surrounding houses, I realized, piecing it all into focus in a flash. Once they've got hold of most of the stretch, they can push through the switch, and worths will multiply by 3 at minimum. Gloria wrapped up the thought. At today's rates, that spells gains from $15 to $20 million. My background in finance quickly sized up the scheme's scale, yet they'd required massive startup cash to kick off the acquisitions. From where? Gloria's face grew somber. Here's where it turns worrisome. I had a detective contact dig into certain logs. The Sterlings boast a track record in Dallas. They spot fragile owners, often the aged or those in money woes, then deploy exploitative lending to claim their assets. Loan swindles, I recalled the phrase from my banking tenure. Spot on. They dangle remortgaging deals that sound irresistible. They tamper with valuations using bogus assessments and craft the debts so default is unavoidable. Once the folks default, they descend and grab the holdings for pennies on the dollar. Images of my fellow residents flooded my thoughts, plenty of them older, scraping by on pensions in houses held for generations. Ideal marks. And my savings, the sums they've been shifting, must be the seed money. They wanted liquidity for those initial grabs, plus to bridge costs till the scheme bore fruit. My nest egg stood as the easiest well to tap. The deliberate viciousness of the operation left me gasping. It went beyond my dwelling and savings. It meant weaponizing them to wreck my whole locale. Folks who'd attended Anani's memorial, who delivered meals after I lost my spouse. And what of Richard? I queried at last, giving words to the suspicion gnawing at me. It haunted me. Just how deep was his involvement? Gloria paused before pulling out yet another file. This footage dates back 3 weeks, captured at the First National Bank in Dallas. The surveillance clip captured Richard and Veronica stepping into the branch, side by side, then sitting down with a loan specialist. The timestamp indicated it happened just 2 days following my operation, when I remained deeply medicated in intensive care. It hit me that they'd leveraged the power of attorney to access my safety deposit box. I knew it instantly from spotting the institution holding my vital papers. That's right, Gloria affirmed, and per the entry records, she added, they took out multiple documents, such as the initial title to your estate and the trust documents. I shut my eyes briefly, a wave of shock washing over me. My very own child, the kid who'd insisted on strict equality during family game nights, who'd once handed back a lost wallet stuffed with $50. What had turned him into someone like this? There's one more item you need to review, Gloria murmured gently, displaying a series of messages. My sources in the SEC forwarded these my way. The Sterlings have lingered on their watch list for some time. The correspondence flowed between Veronica and her dad, time-stamped roughly 8 months back. They outlined their intentions through vague phrasing, highlighting homes in my area and assessing which residents might fall for their tricks. Even more alarming, they referenced my residence as their headquarters, right after seizing ownership. A specific line sent shivers down my spine, remaining reluctant yet compliant. The note read, Mother, improbable to bounce back completely from the planned procedure. Hasten the schedule. Planned procedure. I echoed faintly, barely above a breath. My hip surgery wasn't urgent. It was set up well in advance, months earlier. Isabella, Gloria intoned, her tone carrying a cautionary edge, like she was bracing me for impact. They'd anticipated this moment, I pressed on, the grim reality sinking in. They anticipated my fragility post-operation. They banked on it. We're uncertain if Richard grasped the whole scope, Gloria ventured. No more, I interrupted, lifting my palm to halt her, unwilling to entertain further justifications for him. He grasped plenty. He was aware they coveted my home, my savings. He realized they were scheming during my weakened state. That unshakable knowledge cut deeper than any incision. My son hadn't merely turned against me. He'd plotted it with deliberate chill. I rose, brushing off the ache in my mending hip, and made my way to the glass. The Phoenix cityscape shimmered in the evening glow, oblivious to the personal crisis playing out amid its avenues. "What's your next move?" Gloria inquired quietly. I faced her, my choice utterly resolute. "I demand accountability," I stated plainly, "not only for me, but for all those they've defrauded or targeted, and I intend to reclaim my property." Gloria inclined her head, resolute yet composed. "In that case, we'll proceed with care. They believe victory is theirs. That hands us the advantage of the unexpected." "Excellent," I responded. Already a strategy was taking shape in my mind, for I planned to deliver a shock they'd never forget. While sifting through the land documents alongside Gloria, an unsettling trend surfaced. The Sterlings had methodically acquired residences across my community, laying groundwork for a massive rezoning scheme valued at millions. The sting deepened upon uncovering proof that Richard wasn't merely seizing a chance. He'd been privy to the scheme for months. He could have even timed the seizure to align exactly with my procedure. Facing threats to my neighborhood and my enduring neighbors from their exploitative plot, my determination solidified. This transcended merely regaining my home. It involved dismantling an elaborate con before additional at-risk individuals suffered, and I possessed the exact expertise to achieve it. "Isabella, are you certain?" Gloria queried worriedly, observing as I touched up my appearance in the hotel vanity. "Your hip's recovery is ongoing. I endured 21 days immobilized in that medical facility, powerless," I countered, gliding on lipstick with firm control. Powerlessness ends here. 7 days had elapsed since they ousted me. During that span, Gloria and I had carefully pieced together the mechanics of the Sterling's racket. Their dealings in Dallas had scattered a path of monetary casualties, elderly folks stripped bare by exploitative agreements and falsified records. Here in Phoenix, they were duplicating the tactic, with my dwelling as their hub. "Precision in timing is essential," I stressed to her, appraising my reflection one last time. My sophisticated gray slacks ensemble and subtle accessories conveyed the precise persona I sought. Far from a broken senior, I appeared as a seasoned finance expert with years in the field. "The investigators are standing by," Gloria verified. "They're prepared. They'll intervene solely on our cue." Upon unearthing the scam's full scale, we delivered our findings to the FBI's Economic Offenses Division. The investigators had compiled a dossier on the Sterlings over months, yet required the insider entry we alone could supply. We negotiated an agreement. They'd delay swift detentions, they agreed to give us time to collect stronger proof, and in exchange, I'd get first dibs on reclaiming my belongings. Keep in mind, we require concrete records showing they're exploiting my identity and financial details. I ran through the main elements of our approach: access to the bank, fake signatures, clear acknowledgement of the scheme. Lacking those papers, they might argue I handed it all over willingly. Gloria gave a nod while glancing at her wristwatch. "Veronica's regular beauty parlor visit kicks off in half an hour. She'll be gone for a minimum of 2 hours. Raymond and Claudia are off viewing properties on the other side of the city. And Richard, per his schedule, isn't due home from the office till 5. Ideal timing." My boy's reliable habits, which used to charm me, had turned into my tactical edge. I drew in a steadying breath. Time to move. The cab let me out a couple of streets away from home. I strolled at a leisurely pace, leaning on the walking stick, mostly to feign weakness, rather than needing real aid. The area hadn't changed, still featuring neat lawns, aged residences, and that majestic oak at the intersection where Richard once constructed a play fort. But to me, it all seemed altered, overshadowed by the grim knowledge of the covert dealings unfolding. Drawing nearer to the residence, I spotted minor alterations. The rose bushes I'd nurtured for decades had vanished, swapped for ordinary shrubs. The outdoor seating that Anthony and I had refurbished was missing too. The overhaul was underway, wiping away signs of our household. I skipped the main entrance. Instead, I veered to the rear access by the kitchen. the one I'd overlooked securing in my rush to the medical center. For years, it served as our hidden route. Richard, back in his teen days, slipped through it past bedtime, assuming I was clueless. The key slid smoothly into the mechanism. I slipped inside without a sound, barely hearing strange voices drifting from my office. Trailing the noise, I paused outside the partially ajar door. "The deal with the Miller clan is set for Friday," a male tone declared, one I identified as Raymond Sterling's. "Once sealed, we'll own 40% of the area. What about the Henderson estate?" A second unknown voice inquired. "Probably an associate. That's sorted already." We tapped Mrs. Hayes' account info to lock in the loan. Spotless operation. My fingers clenched the cane hard. They were leveraging my identity and credit history to pull off their scams. Precisely the evidence we sought. I switched on the voice recorder in my pocket device before easing the door wider. The moment halted like a snapshot. Raymond Sterling perched at Anoni's vintage writing table, his colleague positioned near the pane, both fixed on me with raw shock. "Good day, Raymond," I stated evenly, carrying on dealings in my workspace. "Isabella," he shot back right away, rising to his feet. "Didn't see this coming. How'd you enter?" "Via the entrance," I shot back bluntly, "the very one to the dwelling that's still mine by law." His associate, a jittery fellow in his 30s, eyed us with discomfort. "Should I return another time, Mr. Sterling?" "Not necessary," I interjected prior to Raymond speaking. "I'm here only to grab a few vital documents of mine." Raymond's features tightened. "You don't own this place anymore. Richard made that plain." "Height indeed, he did," I agreed, heading to the storage unit in the alcove. "Crystal clear on his aims, just like how obvious it is that you're dipping into my financial access for your funding schemes." Raymond's complexion paled. "You've got no idea what you're saying, right?" I slid open the compartment and retrieved a file. The Henderson deal, employing my records to obtain capital. "I overheard your chat about it moments ago." The associate started retreating to the doorway. "Mr. Sterling, perhaps I should exit. Isabella seems disoriented," Raymond snapped curtly. "Her latest hospital stay messed with her head, hasn't it, Isabella?" I offered a frosty grin while shutting the drawer. My thoughts are sharp as ever. Sharp enough to grasp the conspiracy you, Claudia, and Veronica are weaving. Sharp enough to question whether my own child grasps the repercussions of the deceit he's enabling. Raymond's visage shifted, the facade of worry crumbling to expose cold, deliberate threat. "You've got zero evidence, and even if somehow you did, nobody would side with you against your boy. Now leave, or I'll summon the authorities to haul you off for breaking in." I inclined my head as though weighing his statement. "One point you're spot on about, Raymond. Evidence matters." I lifted my phone, blatantly showing the capture function. That's why I took steps to obtain it. His gaze flared with rage, banishing all traces of startlement. "Hand over that device. Not a chance," I retorted. I edged back to the exit, pulse racing inside while projecting composure. "I've secured what I needed. Savor the home for now." As I pivoted to depart, Raymond surged forward, seizing my limb with painful strength. "You won't walk out with that audio." I'd never foreseen a violent clash. A fierce ache pierced my body, still mending. From my hip throbbed painfully as I fought to keep my balance. "Release me right now," I insisted, my tone sharpening on purpose. "Hand over the phone first," he snarled, reaching for it with his free hand. Right then, the entrance flew open. "FBI, keep your hands visible." Agents Rips and Callahan rushed inside, guns at the ready. Raymond went rigid, then gradually let go of my wrist, lifting his arms in surrender. The backup protocol triggered by the emergency feature on my device had executed flawlessly. Isabella Hayes. Agent Rips moved closer while her colleague restrained Raymond. "You okay?" "Yeah," I answered, steadying myself against the door jamb, "and I believe I've got evidence that'll catch your attention." In a bold move, I'd come back to my residence, capitalizing on Veronica's time away and slipping in via an overlooked entrance to catch Raymond Sterling off guard amid his confessions of embezzlement. Once challenged, his brief astonishment gave way to aggression, prompting our federal allies to step in ahead of schedule. Even with the scuffle escalating, I'd captured the crucial evidence, a taped confession in which Raymond openly confessed to exploiting my financial details for his plot. As officers escorted him out in restraints, I realized this marked only the start of unraveling their whole network. The true challenge lay ahead when my boy learned the truth and realized his mom had toppled the Sterling empire. The federal building felt stark and unwelcoming, with neutral tones on the walls, basic seating, and a subtle aroma of brewed coffee mixed with documents. I sat in a plain interrogation space, my side still smarting even after the potent analgesic Agent Rips had given me. "Ms. Hayes," Agent Callahan noted, snapping his pad shut, "that audio you captured is gold. Paired with the banking papers you and Ms. Evans supplied, we've got solid grounds for warrants on every Sterling asset and file. What about my property?" I pressed. "And my finances?" "A court's already placed a hold on all dealings tied to your estate," he guaranteed. "Nothing can be sold or moved until we sort out true ownership." A wave of ease washed over me, but I recognized the road ahead was long. The Sterlings were detained, yet Richard and Veronica remained in the dark about the developments. "What's next?" I inquired. "We'll carry out raids on their home this evening," Rips outlined. "Ms. Sterling faces interrogation. Regarding your son," the agent paused, her authoritative edge mellowing a bit. "From what you've described, we'll assess any potential role he played." The entry swung wide, and Gloria stepped through, her expression grave yet approving. Fresh judicial directives had landed. They were hitting the Sterling facilities in Dallas at the same time. "Ms. Hayes," Callahan added carefully, "we get that this is tough. If you don't want to watch the search at your place go down," I cut him off decisively. "That's my house. I'm seeing it all the way through." 3 hours on, I rode in an inconspicuous bureau car stationed opposite my home. Dusk was settling, stretching shadows over the yard where Richard had romped as a kid. Veronica's vehicle sat in the drive. She'd come back from her beauty session, oblivious that her dad was in federal holding. "Set," Rips whispered from behind the wheel, tuned into comms via her headset. Mrs. Sterling Hayes verified on site with her daughter. They showed up sooner than anticipated. My chest constricted. Richard wasn't meant to be there. I'd aimed to shield him from the overt display unfolding. I'd even set up a discreet contact for him at work. Instead, he'd endure the raid's intensity right there with his spouse. "Certain you want to see this?" Gloria queried from the seat next to me, her palm over mine. Before replying, a line of cars rolled into view along the road. 3 plain sedans plus an armored unit. They halted before my door, and personnel spilled out in coordinated fashion, a few donning the standard FBI vests. "Federal officers here, with a warrant." The announcement cut through the serene suburb as they neared the entryway. I missed the reply from within, but the barrier parted. Seconds later, from where I watched, Veronica filled the frame, her features morphing from bewilderment to dismay. Richard followed, stationing himself guardedly by her side. "Let's move," Rips directed, popping her door. "Hang back, please." Crossing over, locals poked heads from their places, lured by the stir. I sensed their prying, worried stares, a few maybe savoring the spectacle. Veronica spotted me trailing the team first, her polished facade crumbling. "You," she hissed, her pitch climbing wildly, "you're behind this." Richard's gaze fixed on mine, his features twisting from bewilderment to dread as the realization dawned that I stood alongside the federal officers, not as a suspect like them. "Mom," his tone faltered just a bit, "what's happening here? Your mother has supplied proof of extensive financial deceit orchestrated by the Sterling clan," Agent Callahan declared in an official manner. We possess a warrant to inspect these grounds and seize any pertinent papers and digital equipment. Fraud, Richard echoed, his confusion appearing sincere. What kind of fraud? This is ridiculous. It is, I agreed, stepping forward with my cane, striking a steady beat on the floor. Raymond made it plain this morning that he'd exploited my banking details to arrange bogus funding right in my home office. Veronica's complexion lost every trace of hue. You were present. How on earth did you manage that? Through the side entrance, I answered plainly. There are aspects of this residence you never cared to discover, Veronica, like how it resides in a trust established by my departed husband, which can't be conveyed without the approval of every trustee, Gloria included, who absolutely never endorsed a thing. Richard glanced between me and his spouse, his desperation mounting. Mom, this is all a mix-up. We aim to assist you by swindling your property, emptying your funds, involving your relatives in a real estate scam, and leveraging your standing in finance. My tone stayed resolute amid the storm of feelings surging within. That's no assistance, Richard. That's deception. That's robbery. Mrs. Sterling Hayes, you'll need to accompany us for an interview. Rips cut in, motioning to one of the cars. Veronica's shock evolved into a deliberate poise. I demand my attorney be here, she declared. I refuse to speak without counsel. That's your prerogative, Callahan conceded, then pivoted to Richard. Mr. Thompson will require a word with you, too. I don't get it, Richard uttered, his words empty. Mom, what did you set in motion? That query, so inverted and exposing his failure to grasp his own guilt, struck me like a blow. What did I set in motion? I echoed, eyeing him intently. I've shielded myself and fellow victims from those who assume they can seize anything they desire with no repercussions. I instilled better values in you, Richard. Your father did too. While officers escorted Veronica to a nearby SUV, she spun around with sudden malice. You believe you've triumphed. You haven't the faintest notion of what unfolds once my dad's legal team steps up. Your father is already detained, I broke in serenely, along with your mother. The FBI is raiding your workplaces in Dallas at this moment. It's finished, Veronica. Her features contorted in rage as the agent steered her firmly into the vehicle. Richard lingered on the veranda, staring in stunned silence as additional officers invaded our home, toting gear for gathering proof. Mom, he whispered while I turned to trail Gloria to our ride. I wasn't aware of their full scheme. Please trust me on that. I halted, scrutinizing the countenance of the boy I'd nurtured, probing his eyes for honesty. Maybe you weren't privy to it all, I allowed, yet you knew plenty, Richard, and you picked them over me anyway. As I departed, his shattered plea trailed after. Where do I turn now? I refused to glance back. That plea mirrored the very dilemma I'd confronted when he'd evicted me from my own dwelling. The parallel wasn't overlooked, yet unlike my child, I drew no pleasure from his torment, merely a deep sorrow for our shared losses. Certain acts of disloyalty, I was discovering, inflict scars too severe for easy absolution. With FBI personnel combing through my residence, detaining Veronica, and grilling Richard, I observed from the opposite side of the road, caught between triumph and heartache. The bewilderment etched on my son's visage upon grasping that I'd engineered his collapse swiftly morphed into frantic rejection, insisting he was oblivious to the scheme. Veronica's facade of restraint shattered at last, unveiling the scheming offender she'd proven to be. Though one side of me shrank from Richard's imploring words, where do I turn now? I acknowledged the fitting retribution. He was enduring precisely the ordeal he'd inflicted on me. Certain teachings arrive at a steep price, but as I strode from the abode I'd reclaim shortly, I understood this clash marked merely the initial phase in a broader journey to equity and maybe eventual mending. You ought to have a bite, Isabella. Gloria slid a bowl of broth across the inn table we'd repurposed as a temporary workstation. 3 days had elapsed since the FBI raid. 3 days filled with depositions, proof examinations, and court sessions. affording me scant room to absorb the chaos. "I'm not famished," I responded, sifting through the newest bundle of files Gloria had fetched from her firm. "You haven't eaten properly in days," she pressed. "Your health is still mending. You require fortitude." I exhaled, aware of her accuracy. The bodily strain and stress had finally overtaken me. With hesitation, I uncapped the bowl and sampled a bit of the chicken soup helped. Gloria gave a nod of approval. "We ought to talk about tomorrow's appointment," she said. The session she meant was my initial in-person meeting with Richard following the procedure. He'd arranged it via his attorney, a novice public defender called Marcus Reed, who'd reached out to Gloria yesterday. "He claims he had no idea how deep the Sterling scheme went," Gloria went on evenly. "He insists Veronica hid nearly all the details from him, and that the power of attorney you were duped into signing let him shift money out of your bank accounts." The resentment seeped into my words despite myself. He was clueless about those two, too. Gloria's face grew gentler. "I'm not siding with him, Isabella, just passing along what his attorney mentioned." I placed my spoon on the dish, appetite gone. What more did this Reed fellow mention? "Richard's eager to assist the probe completely. He's willing to provide in-depth statements on Veronica and her folks in return for his circumstances, factoring into his own case. He's turning on them." It shouldn't have caught me off guard, but it did. The Richard I'd known was unwavering in his allegiance. "Survival mode," Gloria proposed. "The case against the Sterlings is ironclad. He's picking the smartest path legally." "And what does he expect from me?" I inquired, though I had a hunch. "Formally, zilch. The talk's apparently just for him to share his side of the story." Gloria's doubtful inflection showed she suspected more. "Off the record, I sense he's counting on you to put in a good word with the authorities. A parent's appeal for mercy might tip the scales." I shut my eyes, drained to the bone, picturing confronting Richard, hearing his rationalizations and alibis, tightened my chest in agony. "You don't need to see him," Gloria murmured kindly. "Right now, he doesn't deserve a thing from you." "I get that," I replied, "but I require closure, Gloria. I have to grasp how my boy turned into someone who could pull this off." The interrogation space in the government complex felt chilly and barren. A steel desk, stiff seats, and a wide mirror that surely hid watchers. I took my place with Gloria at my side, fingers interlocked on the surface to conceal their faint shaking. As the door swung open, the figure who stepped in was hardly familiar. Richard, my child, typically poised and polished, appeared unkempt. His standard attire had given way to creased chinos and a plain top. The unkempt beard on his chin showed days without a razor. "Mom," he uttered, settling opposite me. His counsel, a grave youth in spectacles with thin frames, positioned himself next to him. "Richard," I responded, striving for composure in my tone. An awkward quiet hung in the air. We both struggled to start this fraught exchange. "Miss Hayes," Marcus Reed broke in at last, "my client sought this session to straighten out some elements of the matter that he feels got misconstrued." "Go ahead," I said, eyes locked on Richard rather than his representative. Richard coughed lightly. "For starters, I need you to understand I never intended for it to escalate like this. When Veronica and I discussed her parents relocating to Phoenix, it was supposed to be short-term, until they secured their spot. And the power of attorney," I cut in. "The document you fooled me into endorsing right before my operation." He dropped his stare, flushed with embarrassment. "That came from Veronica. She explained it as a safeguard if choices had to be made during your healing." "But you wielded it to deed over my property and drain my finances," I charged. He paused, eyeing his attorney, who gave a subtle dip of the head. "All that was Veronica and Raymond's doing. They claimed they were reallocating assets to more secure options for your later years. I had no clue it was outright theft." I studied his features, probing for honesty in his gaze. Despair was there, undoubtedly. Panic, too. But was it true sorrow, or merely sorrow at getting exposed? The property, I pressed. You personally informed me I couldn't return. You blocked the entrance to the house your dad and I constructed and declared it wasn't mine anymore. His stare dropped to the desk. Veronica persuaded me it was wisest. She argued the place was overwhelming for you, that a retirement facility would suit you better. He gulped. I believed we were doing you a favor, he tacked on, alluding to evicting me with just my outfit and stashing my things in garage crates. The poise I'd held started to fracture. That's not aid, Richard. That's heartless. I see that now, he whispered. I do now. What hold did they have on you? I burst out. The query had plagued me endlessly. Veronica and her family. What sway did they exert to make you turn against your mother this way? Richard jerked his head up abruptly, startled. His attorney fidgeted uneasily. Ms. Hayes, Marcus Reed cut in. Let's concentrate on— No, Richard broke in. She needs to hear the truth. He drew a long breath. About 3 years back, I sank money into some risky ventures. I blew through a ton of cash, our nest egg, chunks of the retirement stash. I was frantic to recover it all before Veronica caught on. Raymond stepped in with an offer. He claimed these were foolproof investment deals. So he loaned you the funds, I ventured. Richard dipped his head, his face initially crestfallen. Yeah, but soon it spiraled out of control. I inked some contracts. I dove into their operations without grasping the full picture. Before long, I saw the mess I was in, but I was already tangled in a bunch of their scams. They held something over your head, Gloria noted. They had me trapped, Richard shot back with a bitter edge. Veronica laid it out plain. If I didn't play along with their schemes, her dad would pin everything on me. I struggled to absorb this revelation, trying to square it with the son I'd always believed in. And the house, my bank details, it was all a loyalty check, he confessed, his shoulders slumping in regret, just to prove I was all in. Veronica promised that after the rezoning of the community property, we'd rake in enough dough to settle you somewhere nice and cozy. You really bought into that. I couldn't mask the skepticism in my tone. I hoped it was true, he murmured gently. It beat facing the reality of my actions. Those raw words struck me harder than anything since this ordeal started. For a moment, I saw echoes of the boy I raised, the one who'd fess up to a fib eventually. Pain be damned. Richard, I ventured cautiously, what is it you're after from me right now? He met my eyes squarely for the first time. Nothing, Mom. I've got no right to your aid or your pardon. I only— His voice faltered a bit. I had to let you know I never intended to cause you pain. I was spineless, terrified. I chose paths I regret deeply. Come what may from here, I'll face it head on. The straightforward grace in his response, nothing like the frantic alibis I'd braced for, left me unguarded. Before I could reply, a sharp rap at the door halted us. Agent Rip stepped inside, offering a quick nod of regret. Apologies for barging in, but something pressing has come up. Mrs. Hayes, mind coming out here briefly? In the stark, sterile confines of that government interview chamber, I confronted my son at last, chasing clarity on the treachery that had ripped our family asunder. Rather than the dodges I'd anticipated, Richard unveiled a naughtier reality. Years prior, driven by financial ruin, he'd gotten hooked into the Sterling's dealings, turning into their puppet via threats and cunning. While his account didn't excuse his choices, owning up that handing over the house was Veronica's devised proof of allegiance, gave me my initial peek at the real son beneath it all. Right as that harsh insight started reshaping my view, Agent Rips charged in with critical updates, signaling another twist in this ever more complicated saga. Even amid the wreckage, I caught myself pondering if a path ahead might exist, not reverting to the old days, but forging onward from harsh honesty over soothing deceptions. Agent Rips guided me to a compact meeting space further along the corridor. Gloria trailed right behind, her usual composure a touch off-kilter, which set my nerves on edge at once. "What's going on?" I pressed once the door shut. "We've rolled out fresh warrants linked to the Sterling's documents," Ripps outlined, sliding a dossier onto the surface. "Investigators in Dallas uncovered material you ought to review." She flipped it open and extracted a series of snapshots, laying them out methodically before me. I bent forward, taking in the jarring visuals with mounting confusion. They depicted a secluded medical suite, hooked-up gear, and a figure reclining in a hospital bed. "I'm lost," I admitted, glancing up. "How does this connect?" My breath hitched as my eyes locked on the final image. "That patient is you, out cold, wired to machines in the intensive care unit from your latest stay," Ripps clarified in a hushed tone. Beside them, she set down additional paperwork. My health files, physician observations, prescription directives, and personal patient logs, items meant to be locked tight at Phoenix General Hospital. How on earth did they obtain these? Gloria demanded, her legal mind snapping to the ramifications. "That's the issue that's alarming us," Ripps responded. "The dates on these pics fall outside standard visit times, and this paperwork holds details no relative should access casually." A chill coursed over me as the meaning sank in. An insider at the facility was working with them. Ripps confirmed with a somber tilt of her head. "We've pinpointed a nurse who pulled up your files multiple times when neither Richard nor Veronica was pre's phone logs revealed several exchanges between this individual and Raymond Sterling. What was the reason?" I wondered, struggling to grasp why they'd keep such a tight watch on me. Gloria's complexion had drained of color as she pored over the papers. "Isabella, check out these drug records." I traced her pointing finger to an entry in the files, an alteration in the pain relief dosage following my operation. The initial order was struck through, substituted with a larger amount in unfamiliar script. "Your healing process dragged on longer than anticipated," Ripps stated gently. "The illness that extended your stay in the hospital to 21 days, rather than the typical 5 to 7. We're probing whether it could have been intentionally induced." The suggestion struck me like a forceful impact. "Are you suggesting they attempted to—" I trailed off, unable to complete the thought. "We're not leveling charges at this point," Ripps responded promptly. "However, we're exploring the chance that an individual deliberately sought to extend your time in care, allowing the Sterlings additional opportunity to carry out their scheme." I clutched the table's rim, a sudden vertigo washing over me. The notion that somebody had tampered with my health care, endangering my very existence, was nearly beyond belief. "Is Richard aware of this?" I finally questioned. "Not at the moment," she answered. "We chose to brief you initially, given how intimately this involves you." Gloria rested her palm on mine, her look solemn. "Isabella, should anyone have purposefully meddled with your treatment, the situation intensifies dramatically. This goes beyond mere deception and mistreatment of the elderly. It could involve attempted harm." "I get it," I cut in, unwilling to let those terms be voiced. The very idea was too horrific to face head-on. "One more thing," Ripps went on, showing clear unease. "We've uncovered a life insurance document under your name, issued half a year back. The payout goes to Richard Thompson." The space seemed to spin. "Richard was in on it," I murmured, the final shreds of faith in my child dissolving. "He must have been." "That's not certain," Ripps cautioned. "Though his name appears on the form, we've spotted multiple falsified items in this affair already. More inquiry is required before we jump to judgments." I shut my eyes, fighting off this fresh surge of disloyalty. Should Richard have recognized these schemes? Should he have played a role in endangering me? Then every word he shared during that meeting was pure fabrication. That glimpse of my real boy, which I'd believed genuine, turned out to be yet another ploy. "I have to confront him once more," I declared, my gaze snapping open with fresh determination. Immediately, Mrs. Hayes, considering this latest intel, "We recommend against it," Ripps started. "I require seeing his reaction to this news." I pressed. "That's the only way to tell if he was aware. After 2 decades in regulatory roles and a full life as a parent, I'd honed an uncanny knack for spotting deceit. I needed to peer into Richard's eyes as this truth exploded. Rips paused, then agreed. We plan to grill him on these details regardless. If you're set on joining, we can make it happen. Back in the chamber, Richard and his attorney conversed in low voices. The lawyer shifted closer, instantly vigilant. Agent Rips, my client has assisted completely. If you're suggesting he took part in any sort of... I'm not suggesting a thing so far, Rips broke in. I'm seeking clarification on these records. I have no explanation since I wasn't involved. Richard's tone spiked with alarm. Veronica managed every aspect of our coverage. She told me we were refreshing the documents. I just endorsed what she presented. The genuine terror in his gaze, not mere worry over fallout, but authentic dread at the deeds, spoke volumes beyond speech. My boy had been vulnerable, gullible, and ethically unsteady, yet I refused to accept he'd willfully joined a plot that threatened my survival. Do you grasp the gravity here, Richard? I inquired softly. Your spouse and her family could have plotted something infinitely graver than merely claiming my home. He buried his face in his palms, his frame starting to shake. Oh God, he breathed. What have I caused? What have I permitted? Witnessing my son grapple with the depth of his partner's treachery stirred an unforeseen surge of empathy in me. Richard had committed grave errors. He'd wronged me in manners that felt irredeemable. Still, he stood as another casualty of the Sterling's deceit, merely a pawn in a scheme much more sinister than he'd ever fathomed. I must revise my account, he announced abruptly, raising his head with fresh resolve. I have to reveal all I understand about Veronica and her folks. All of it. A crushing disclosure demolished the scant remnants of my reality. Clues indicated the Sterlings had purposefully disrupted my post-op healing, perhaps even putting my existence at risk. The most staggering find was the insurance policy on my life naming Richard as recipient. Upon facing this, with this proof in hand, my son's raw dismay and disbelief revealed exactly what I so urgently wanted to grasp. Even though he'd let me down in the worst way, he wasn't tangled up in this horrific part of their scheme. As Richard confronted the full extent of his spouse's deeds, his resolve to expose it all suggested that deeper shadows still lurked beneath the surface. Amid my lingering fury, I couldn't help but wonder if, in the midst of this horror, the tentative beginnings of some atonement could take root. Not quite pardon, but maybe a glimmer of insight. 17 properties. Agent Callahan unrolled a map on the conference table. Every one obtained via identical deceptive tactics, all funneled through dummy firms connected to the Sterlings. 14 days had elapsed since the shocking disclosures regarding my health files. The FBI had relocated me to a secure flat. Just Gloria and the case's core team were aware of my location. The probe had expanded remarkably, exposing a web of crime much broader than we'd first imagined. What about the nurse? I posed the query that had tormented me ever since discovering that someone could have intentionally worsened my healing process. Miranda Jenkins, Rips responded, sliding a staff dossier my way. She handled after-surgery duties for 3 years. We verified multiple deposits from a Sterling front operation, adding up to more than $25,000 over the past 6 months. She's confessed to tampering with my drugs. I had to uncover every detail, no matter the agony. Callahan and Rips shared a look. She's assisting us, Callahan noted warily. Her account shows she was instructed to extend your healing time by tweaking specific meds and slipping in a subtle bacterial taint while swapping IV lines. Nausea twisted in my gut at the detached precision of that account, which truly boiled down to deliberate injury. She might have ended my life. She insists she dosed the infection to drag out your stay in the hospital without endangering your survival, Rips went on, her voice thick with disgust, as though that excused her actions. And Veronica, she masterminded the whole thing. The words came out almost like a statement. I already sensed the truth. Raymond Sterling reached out to Jenkins first, Callahan verified. Yet the records point to Veronica crafting the specifics. Recovered texts from her device feature exact inquiries into your care timeline, drug protocols, and projected release days. I shut my eyes briefly, struggling to process the deliberate malice behind it. My daughter-in-law had willfully dragged out my torment to give their plot more breathing room. What role did Richard play? Gloria inquired, saying aloud what stuck in my throat. There's zero indication he was aware of the health tampering, Rips stated. His help has been thorough, and we're convinced it's sincere. Prosecutors view his account as vital for holding the Sterlings accountable. A minor comfort, at least. My boy had wronged me deeply, yet he hadn't plotted my bodily harm. That distinction mattered, even if it couldn't wipe away the hurt from his choices. Anything more I need to review? Callahan wondered, nudging yet another file in my direction. We pulled this from Veronica's personal inbox. Within lay a chain of emails between her and her folks, stretching back nearly 2 years. They'd carefully plotted to claim my holdings, beginning with cutting me off from loved ones, then slowly taking over my money matters, and ultimately shifting me to an extended care home after securing full legal sway. Chills ran through my fingers as I scanned the icy words. They'd zeroed in on me well before my hip operation became essential, viewing my worsening health as a chance to take advantage. My admission to the hospital merely sped up their schedule. And here's the truly chilling part, Callahan went on. He set down a printout of an ad for an upscale senior living spot in Arizona. Attached was a note from Veronica to her parents. Ideal spot for Isabella after we wrap things up. Remote, light oversight, and the dementia wing takes folks with scant health paperwork. Once settled, we dictate every access and contact. Their intent was to commit me, essentially lock me away in a distant site away from those who recognized me, where I'd fade into obscurity as they savored their ill-gotten wealth. We'll pursue extra counts from this material, Rips clarified. Elder mistreatment, plotting, and maybe even murder attempt, based on the DA's take on the health interference. I dipped my head, too stunned to reply right away. The sheer scale of their blueprint, the methodical ruin not just of my wealth, but my liberty and self-respect, defied full comprehension. How soon until I return home? I managed at last. The worry that had plagued me for we the forensics crew wrapped up their work at your house yesterday, Callahan informed me. In theory, you could head back right away, though we'd advise holding off until we're certain there aren't any lingering threats. I want to return today, I stated resolutely. I crave the comfort of my own surroundings. Gloria gave my hand an encouraging squeeze. I'll stick around with you initially. We could add extra safeguards if it feels necessary. Rips agreed. That can be set up. But there's one more issue we need to discuss. She paused briefly. Richard wants to meet with you again. He's due to be moved to a low-security facility while awaiting his court date, and he specifically requested a visit beforehand. My immediate reaction was to turn it down. The sting of his disloyalty lingered sharply, and I doubted my readiness for yet another tense encounter. Still, a part of me, maybe the parent recalling the child he used to be, found it impossible to say no. Tomorrow morning works if you're okay with that, Rips confirmed when I inquired outright. Following that, his access will be severely restricted until the trial wraps up. I gave a measured nod. I'll go then. That very afternoon, I lingered on my front steps, key poised at the door, reluctant to insert it. The exterior appeared unchanged, yet I was aware that intruders had breached my sanctuary within. They'd schemed against me in what ought to have been a haven of protection. No rush, Gloria murmured gently at my side. This won't be easy. I drew in a steadying breath and twisted the key. The comforting aroma of my abode, the polished timber's shine, the aged volumes, the subtle lavender wafting from the drawer liners, was now overshadowed by unfamiliar scents and harsh cleaners. Subtle signs marked the Sterling's short stay. The furnishings had been disturbed only slightly. My cherished orchid had vanished from the sunroom. Fresh drapes now adorned the sitting area. In my office, Anthony's heirloom writing desk faced the entrance rather than the garden view where he preferred to labor. That small shift struck me more profoundly than anticipated. They dismantled our habits, our shared past. "We can restore it all to how it once was," Gloria promised, noticing my expression. "Reclaim it as your own." I acknowledged with a gradual nod, moving room by room, cataloging the alterations and intrusions. In the main sleeping quarters, my wardrobe had been cleared from the wardrobe, supplanted by Veronica's lavish attire. My modest trinket case stood bare. The gifts from Anthony, accumulated across our years together, had disappeared. "The FBI retrieved nearly all of your valuables from the Sterling Safety Deposit Vault," Rips had explained previously. "They'll hand them back after completing their evidentiary analysis." It offered scant solace to realize that outsiders had handled those cherished tokens of my union, appraising them solely for worth rather than meaning. In the cooking area, my treasured handwritten formula notes, including irreplaceable ones from my mother and grandmother, had been tossed aside, substituted with pristine, untouched contemporary volumes. That dismissal struck as deeply personal, like they'd wiped away my lineage's legacy, inflicting a hurt deeper than mere larceny. As I assessed the upheaval, an unexpected serenity washed over me. This dwelling, these possessions, they'd been desecrated, but ownership remained mine. I'd endured. I'd battled and regained what was stolen. The Sterling clan had misjudged my fortitude, my allies, and my resolve. "I'm remaining here," I resolved, meeting Gloria's gaze, "starting tonight, in my residence." "You certain?" she queried, worry etching her features. "Why not begin anew in the morning?" "Absolutely," I affirmed, my tone infused with fresh vigor. I refused to let them banish me from my dwelling for even one more evening. As dusk approached, I settled on the rear veranda with a mug of tea, observing the fading light over the grounds Anthony and I had cultivated long ago. The roses required trimming. The hydrangeas had been overlooked, yet the core of our joint creation persisted. The coming day held tougher dialogues with Richard, further court formalities, the drawn-out effort to mend my abode and existence. But this evening, I'd seized back my territory. It marked a fresh start. As the probe advanced, a chilling reality emerged. Veronica and her folks had devised a scheme far more sinister than basic pilfering. Proof revealed they'd intentionally sabotaged my health restoration through a bribed caregiver's aid. Their intent was to commit me to a remote institution, and they'd shadowed me for nearly 2 years. Though Richard appeared unaware of the scheme's vilest elements, the premeditated malice of their designs for me proved too horrific to fully grasp. Amid the despoiled interior, witnessing the obliteration of my wedded life's remnants, I grasped that recovery stretched far beyond possessions, to restoring my inner peace. The next day, I'd face my son once more, prior to his relocation to a detention center for trial. A discussion I dreaded this encounter, yet knew it was essential if I hoped to grasp the depths of our family's unraveling. The visiting area in the jail facility surprised me with its unexpected brightness, where harsh fluorescent bulbs bounced off the muted yellow walls in a futile bid for warmth. Richard waited at a modest table, clad in the oversized standard jumpsuit that draped awkwardly over his frame. He'd shed pounds since his capture, his features gaunt, his eyes sunken from endless insomnia. "I'm grateful you showed up," he murmured as I settled opposite him. "No attorney joined us this round." "This choice was yours," they'd informed me. "Did you request my presence?" I responded evenly. "Well, here I sit." He inclined his head, dropping his stare to his knuckles, which he clasped firmly atop the surface. "They informed me about the caregiver, the scheme Veronica and her folks devised against you." "Indeed," I acknowledged, offering no further words. I just lingered in patience. "I promise, Mom, it was beyond my knowledge," His tone fractured a bit. I realized they coveted your home, your funds. That alone was reprehensible, inexcusable, yet I never suspected they'd go that far. He paused, struggling to voice the sheer atrocity of their scheme. I trust your word on that, I stated plainly, and he jerked his head upward, taken aback. You accept my account of that particular detail? Absolutely. The proof I've reviewed convinces me you remained oblivious to their intent to injure me bodily or commit me against my will. I delivered my words in a steady, detached manner, though you were fully cognizant of their aim to seize all that belonged to me. You chose to join in that robbery. He recoiled slightly, yet offered no rebuttal. True enough. Why, Richard? The query that had tormented me for weeks at last surfaced. You were raised amid every opportunity. Your dad and I instilled in you honesty, regard for people, whatever became of that young man. Richard stayed quiet for an extended stretch, as though summoning resolve for his admission. I've posed that very question to myself each evening behind bars, he eventually answered. The straightforward reply is my frailty. I feared Veronica might leave if I refused her demands. I dreaded the monetary fallout should her father reveal my role in prior frauds. And the tougher truth, I urged. The tougher truth, he echoed, meeting my gaze squarely, is that eventually I convinced myself I merited more than my efforts warranted. That deception was fair game if it secured my desires. His words emerged as a faint murmur. I transformed into a stranger, a person your father would have despised. The reference to Anthony, who had beamed with pride over our boy and envisioned the adult he'd grow into, stabbed through me like a dagger. Your dad would feel let down, I conceded without reservation, as do I. Yet what would grieve him deepest isn't your errors, but your abandonment of your core values to conceal them. Richard dipped his head in agreement, embracing the reality sans justification. The district attorneys proposed a bargain, 5 years cut to 3 via good conduct, in return for my complete account against Veronica and her family. Will you take it? Without pause, he affirmed, it's leniency I haven't earned. We shared a quiet interval, the burden of repercussions suspended in the air. My child faced years incarcerated. The existence he'd once enjoyed had dissolved irretrievably. The promising horizon Anthony and I had pictured for him now dwindled to this barren meeting space, illuminated by merciless overhead glow. I uncovered an item in the residence the day before, I remarked, shifting topics. Deep inside your father's desk compartment. From my bag, I retrieved a faded pouch. It's correspondence he penned for you prior to his passing. He instructed me to deliver it when the moment felt right for you to receive it. That moment has arrived. Richard's fingers shook faintly as he accepted the pouch, flipping it to spot his name in Anthony's distinctive script. I had no idea this was real, he breathed. In his final weeks, he composed multiple notes, I explained. This marks the concluding one. I observed as he unfolded it with care, as if the sheet could disintegrate under his touch. I held my tongue while he absorbed the contents, noting the parade of feelings on his expression. Anguish, remorse, and at last a spark of resolve. Upon completion, he refolded the note meticulously and clutched it to his heart briefly before sliding it back inside. I'm thankful you delivered this, he expressed, his tone steadier. I required his guidance once more, despite the setting. He waved loosely at our environment. What lies ahead for you post-release? I inquired, once your term concludes. The inquiry caught him off guard. Maybe he hadn't permitted thoughts of what followed. Maybe he hadn't anticipated I'd envision any tomorrow for him past atonement. I'm uncertain, he confessed. My profession and resources are finished, and my standing, naturally. He added with a shrug that conveyed the wreckage of his prior world. You'll need to reconstruct not only your circumstances, but your ethics as well, I advised him. That demands the greatest effort. He paused briefly, then voiced the concern that burdened him most. Can you ever find it in your heart to pardon me, Mom? I pondered my response deliberately, avoiding superficial reassurances or hollow assurances. Pardon isn't an instant event, Richard. It's a journey. At this point, I'm still grappling with the hurt, the disloyalty, and the shock of learning what you've turned into. I met his gaze steadily. I'm not sure if total pardon can ever happen, but here's what I do know. You're still my child. That unbreakable bond remains. The shape of our bond moving forward hinges on the choices you pursue starting now. He inclined his head, taking in that tempered reply with surprising composure. That's just. Even more than just. Our session was drawing to a close. An officer neared, set to lead him back to confinement. As we rose for farewell, he posed one final query. The residence. Will you remain there after all that's transpired? Absolutely, I stated resolutely. It's my sanctuary. I refuse to allow their actions to drive me from the existence your father and I crafted together. Wise choice, he whispered gently. Father would have approved. Watching him depart with his posture straight amid the ordeal, I sensed an unforeseen measure of resolution. It wasn't recovery. That lay far in the distance, yet it marked the start of comprehension. My boy had chosen disastrously. He had wounded me in manners that could scar irreparably. Yet, under the figure entangled in the sterling plot, echoes of the youth I nurtured lingered. Beyond the holding facility, Gloria waited in her vehicle, a quiet ally I'd come to rely on through these grueling periods. How did the meeting unfold? She inquired as I slid into the seat beside her. About as anticipated, I answered, observing the fall foliage dance across the lot. He's agreed to a bargain sentence, 5 years, maybe shortened to 3. And your emotions on that? I paused to probe my inner state honestly. Grieving eased lingering resentment fading somewhat, but clarity dominates now on the events and our path ahead. Gloria acknowledged with a nod, grasping without elaboration. As we headed to my revitalized haven, under repair and reclaiming its essence, I reflected on the trials of late, from the sting of treachery to the battle for accountability, from the terror of uncovering their scheme against me to this tentative accord. The journey forward remained tangled. Court battles with Veronica and her family would stretch over seasons. Safeguarding my holdings and reconstructing my world demanded patience. My tie to my son, should it mend, would call for sustained labor over ages. Yet for the initial instance since emerging from operation to find my reality fractured, I harbored real optimism for tomorrow, not owing to simplicity in the route, but thanks to an inner resilience I'd scarcely suspected. As we approached my avenue, the declining sun cast a warm glow over my dwelling's front, hinting at fresh starts amid the closures. In the stark, unforgiving glow of the visitation area at the facility, I at last received my son's candid admission, his avowal of ethical collapse, of veering from the principles his father and I had embedded. Though he displayed true dismay at the bodily threat Veronica and her kin had plotted for me, he owned up entirely to plundering my resources, confronting a settlement that meant incarceration for an extended stretch. I shared his father's final bequest, a note Anthony penned prior to passing, reserved for Richard's direst hour. His plea regarding pardon lacked a simple resolution. The sole gift I could extend was candor on the extended, unpredictable path we both faced. Departing the facility, a surprising sharpness emerged within me, not mending as of now, but the initial stride toward the altered existence on our horizons. With my abode under renovation and retribution in motion, I turned my gaze to prospects rather than past anchors, embracing a fortitude I hadn't realized I held. That's the final piece, Gloria remarked, positioning a cherished family photo on the fresh mantel in my parlor. 6 months had elapsed since my meeting with Richard at the holding site. 6 months of steady reconstruction for my dwelling, my resources, and my inner fortitude. It appears precisely as it ought, I observed, scanning the space. The furnishings had resumed their spots. The drapes sported fresh patterns to my taste, and the faint remnants of the Sterling's temporary occupation had been erased with care. "Surpassing expectation," Gloria replied, gesturing to the updated alarm interface near the entrance. "It's more secure these days than at any prior time." She spoke truth. All I'd endured had spurred tangible upgrades, sturdier barriers, an all-encompassing alarm setup, revised safeguards for my monetary dealings. The vulnerabilities that enabled the Sterlings to worm their way into my world had been pinpointed and safeguarded against any repeats. "The roses are thriving once more," I noted, glancing outside at my garden where fresh spring growth was pushing through. I'd devoted countless hours to resetting and nurturing those neglected flower patches from the Sterling's takeover, discovering an unanticipated balm for my soul and a renewed tie to the soil. Gloria grinned, picking up on the symbolism in what I said. If they can rebound with the right attention and patience, then so can we. The recent months had yielded real advancements. Veronica and her folks were hit with a barrage of federal accusations: fraud, plotting, mistreatment of the elderly, plus attempted murder tied to the drug tampering. The case against them, bolstered by Richard's thorough account, left no room for doubt. To dodge a full courtroom battle and steep prison terms, they struck deals. Raymond got 20 years, Claudia 15, Veronica 18. Their web of crime turned out broader than we'd first suspected, with sufferers tracked down across 3 states. The nurse who'd messed with my meds drew an 8-year stretch, cut down to 5 for spilling details on additional frail folks the Sterlings had preyed on. The probe revealed 2 earlier incidents of older homeowners who passed away under shady conditions after linking up with Sterling investment schemes, now flagged as potential killings. My block escaped the grasping redevelopment scheme. Once the Sterling scheme unraveled, the homes they'd snapped up were reverting to their true owners or estates. The area rallied, forming a safety web for older residents to shield them from such cons down the line. "Made up your mind on the meeting?" Gloria inquired, snapping me out of my reverie while pouring us both some chilled tea. She meant Richard's most recent overture. These days, 3 months into his stint at a low-security spot, he'd wondered if I'd be open to another face-to-face. His weekly notes starting from day 1 of lockup had honored my limits, never pushing for absolution but always expressing regret and outlining his rehab efforts. "Yeah, I believe I will," I replied, caught off guard by the resolve in my tone. "Not this coming week. I've got the Garden Society event, but maybe the one after that." Gloria dipped her head, keeping her face even-keeled. "You sound more at ease with it than you did a month back." "I had a dream about Anthony last night," I shared, and that recollection gave me some surprising comfort. We were chatting on the porch glider, just like in the good old days. He said something that really lingered. "Healing isn't about wiping away the hurt. It's about giving the mark a reason to exist." "That's pure Anthony," Gloria remarked with a gentle grin. "He had a knack for pulling insight from the tough stuff." I went on. "It got me reflecting on Richard and how certain hurts might never seal up completely, yet they could still point towards something worthwhile, not circling back to the past, but stepping into fresh territory." The chime at the door cut us off. Peering at my updated tablet linked to the surveillance feed, I spotted a courier clutching a hefty bunch of blooms. "Got any posies coming?" Gloria wondered, making for the entrance. "Nope," I answered, a familiar fatigue washing over me. Even with the beefed-up protections now, suspicion lingered stubbornly. Gloria verified the driver's ID before taking the bundle. A stunning mix of lilies and irises, my go-tos. The note was straightforward. "Wishing you well on your special day, from your neighbor, Eleanor Jameson." A warmth spread through me at the kindness. Eleanor Jameson had settled into the place opposite mine 3 months prior, a former lit prof with sharp humor and matching interests. We'd gradually built a rapport, swapping advice on plants and book picks. She'd grieved her spouse right around when Anthony left me, forging an instant link of empathy. "Such a sweet touch," Gloria observed, eyeing the display. "You've really woven a strong circle around yourself. Spot on. Post-Sterling mess, I'd chosen to deepen my ties rather than pull away into solitude. The local reading group I'd started already gathered in my den every month. The Elders Hub, where I pitched in 2 days weekly, had turned into a hub of true companionships. The horticulture group embraced my know-how on vintage roses, even tapping me to lead the yearly showcase. These genuine, voluntary links served as my sturdiest armor against any coming frailty. "Lately, I've been mulling over the foundation," I mentioned as we eased into the patio rocker with our drinks. "You know, the Anthony Miller Medical Research Foundation," I specified, alluding to the group my late husband had launched to back probes into the uncommon cardiac issue that claimed his life, his existence. "And what of it?" Gloria inquired. "I aim to broaden its scope," I clarified, "introduce a branch dedicated to safeguarding seniors, offering legal aid, combating scams, providing training, and assisting those who've been harmed." Gloria's gaze sparkled with excitement. "Drawing on your background to aid folks facing comparable ordeals." Precisely. The Steerings had preyed on countless individuals prior to setting their sights on me. Many lacked my means or the insight to shield themselves. I intend to alter that harsh truth for future victims. "That's an inspiring notion," Gloria responded with genuine warmth. "Anthony would have approved." "I believe you're right," I answered, gazing over the area where I'd pieced together my feeling of belonging and safety once more, discovering meaning in the wound, just as he once put it. As the day faded into dusk, we lingered in a soothing quiet, observing residents coming back from their jobs and kids frolicking in adjacent lawns, the rhythm of the locality thrumming nearby. The ordeal I'd endured would never fully vanish. Flashes of heightened vigilance and sudden recollections of deceit would persist. Yet those marks no longer shaped my everyday routine. They evolved into wellsprings of insight, greater compassion, and fresh resolve. Afterward, once Gloria departed, I settled at Anthony's desk, now properly situated before the garden vista, and started sketching the framework for the Foundation's expanded unit. While I labored, a sense of alignment washed over me, like a loop drawing to a close. The Steerings had singled me out, viewing me as a vulnerable, readily manipulated senior widow. Now the Foundation would convert that agonizing chapter into safeguards for numerous others. The coming day held fresh hurdles. A session with the Foundation's directors, arrangements for my upcoming trip to see Richard, and reviving the garden overlooked in my time away. Yet for the first time in ages, I anticipated these tasks with real eagerness beyond mere resolve. My phone buzzed, halting my efforts. It was Eleanor, the neighbor opposite, checking that the blooms had reached me intact and extending an invitation to a classical ensemble performance the following weekend. During our chat, it struck me how profoundly my world had shifted over the half year since reclaiming my residence. The treachery had shattered a core element of me. My innate faith in kin, in the sanctuary that everyday surroundings should provide. But from that fracture, novel resilience surfaced, fresh bonds formed, and a reimagined mission took root, one that might never have arisen without it. Discovering meaning in the wound, I whispered to myself after ending the call. Anthony's insight echoed within, not healing the hurt completely, but enabling it to evolve into something purposeful, something that, over time, might even hold a touch of grace. 6 months following my showdown with Richard, I'm navigating a period of surprising revival. With my home revived and the greenery flourishing anew, word arrives that Veronica and her folks have pleaded guilty to extended jail terms. Their vast illicit web has at last crumbled. The community they preyed upon has banded together for collective vigilance. Meanwhile, I've cultivated fresh alliances and local links that brighten my routine. When Richard seeks yet another meeting from the low-risk facility, I resolve, prompted by a vision featuring Anthony, that I'm prepared to proceed, not to wipe away the past, but to extract significance from the suffering. That drive materializes in my scheme to enlarge the Anthony Miller Medical Research Foundation, incorporating initiatives for senior safety and turning my individual anguish into armor for potential targets. As I ease into this fresh phase, it dawns on me that while the disloyalty fractured something vital inside, that break-carved room for unforeseen progress, novel relationships, and a richer grasp of life's essentials. In the years ahead, this tale serves as a reminder. Evildoers will inevitably face exposure and retribution, whereas those who hold to integrity will claim the fairness and serenity they merit.